All right, so we took the grinder and we basically, what I did was I just started the bevel on this. A couple of things to consider. One is that obviously the higher up you get, the less metal needs to come off. So you need to focus more, the most of your grinding down here, and then a moderate amount of grinding up here, and then the least amount of grinding up here. And that way you don't get, you maintain this angle and you don't get anything that's concave. So, you know, what's really important also to remember is the first knife that you make is probably not going to come out perfect, and that's okay. I think what's more important is that you're learning how to make knives. So if you learn how to make knives, you're going to be able to make knives your whole life. If you just want a knife, then just go out and buy a knife, right? So the goal at the end of your first knife is not just to have a knife. You will have a knife, but not just to have a knife, but to learn the process. And then you keep getting better and better as you go. So, you know, do the best you can. If you're worried about messing up with the grinder, then maybe you do a little bit more with the file. You know, the better and better you get with the grinder and the more experience you get, the less you really need to take off with the file, the more you can do with the grinder. So I've done this a lot of times, so it looks really clean, and it's all set up for the file. So I probably only need to file on this for a few minutes to get it flattened out on both sides, but you may need to do a little bit more than that. So what you want to do is just clamp it in the vise, and we want to clamp it as far as we can so that it doesn't wobble too much. Okay, and then we're just going to take our file. I'm going to put my glove on real quick. We're just going to take our file and we're going to just start working that same bevel that we were just working with the grinder. I'm probably squishing it a little bit over here, and that's okay because I can just take the file at the end and clean that up before we heat treat it. Plus that'll be covered up by the handle anyway. So what I'm doing is I'm basically evening this out. If there's any little indentions by the grinder, I'm taking those out, and then I'm also taking all these grinder marks out. So the file will leave a much finer, flat, you know, edge. We're actually not going to sand this knife just because I just think you don't need to sand it. And once it comes out of the fire, it's going to be have a bunch of carbon on it. It's going to be kind of blackish. If you want to sand that off later, you can. All right, so when I'm working with the file here, really, I'm just trying to take out any little concave portions. I'm also taking out all these grinder marks. I'm not going to sand this blade. I just decided I'm just going to leave it kind of rustic. When it comes out of the fire, it's going to have kind of a carbonized black coating on it. I don't think it's that big of a deal. If you want a really nice sanded finished knife, one of the tips is to sand out any little file marks or anything like that with sandpaper before you heat treat it, because once you heat treat it, the steel is hardened and it's much harder to file out any little nick or imperfection. But anyway, we're not going to sand it. I'm just going to leave it kind of rustic, forged looking, so I'm not going to worry too much about little file marks and stuff like that, but I'm going to make sure that this bevel is nice and clean. I don't really think you have to be that exact, but this can be a little bit tricky in that there's a lot of metal to take off here, and it's a big surface area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the grinder and I'm going to grind in here and attempt to kind of grind this down a little bit so that I don't have to file so much. I'm not trying to get it finished, I'm just trying to grind off some of this metal in here